Welcome to today's webcast. Today I'm going to be talking about the Analysis Cockpit, and my aim for today is to explain to you the basic concepts of the Analysis Cockpit and some of the magic that we built into the system, and how it all works together with the ASGARD Management Center with Thor and Spark. Now, in order to do that, I have built a lab environment, which I'll be showing you in a minute. Within this lab environment, I will demonstrate certain things. The first is run a scan with Thor and Spark using the ASGARD Management Center on all systems within the lab. I will then show you how to collect, filter, and analyze these logs with the Analysis Cockpit. That makes it easier to filter out legitimate anomalies, to filter out false positives, and focus on real important events and incidents in future scans. Finally, I would like to give you an impression on how a basic workflow within your Security Operations Center could look like using the Analysis Cockpit. Now, how it all works together. We say that the easiest way to secure your enterprise is to use a simple three-step process. The first one would be to scan your infrastructure for indicators of compromise using Thor or Spark with the ASGARD Management Center for scan control. Step 2 is to analyze these results once and set your baseline with the Analysis Cockpit. The third step is to rescan your infrastructure on a frequent basis. We have customers that do that every week, we have customers that do that every month, and also customers that do it for certain assets every day. Once you have set your baseline and you perform frequent scans, you'll find it easy to focus on the changes to these baselines. These changes are shown in the Analysis Cockpit in a very simple manner. This makes it easy to analyze these events that represent potential security incidents. Let's take a look at our lab setup. We have an ASGARD Management Center. This appliance is able to connect to up to 10,000 endpoints. In our lab, we only have 3,500 endpoints. We will be using our ASGARD Management Center to scan the endpoints for indicators of compromise. In order to do this, each endpoint requires an ASGARD scan control agent. We can use the agents to execute a Thor or Spark scan depending on what we want to do. Once you start a Thor or Spark scan, the log files are sent back to the ASGARD Management Center. We have configured this ASGARD Management Center to forward these logs to the Analysis Cockpit for further analysis. Another option is to configure the ASGARD Management Center to forward it to your SIEM system or to your log management system. Right now, there are basically no limits, but in most cases, we recommend using the Analysis Cockpit for setting the baseline and filtering out anomalies, and then providing high-quality events to your SIEM system. So let's get to our ASGARD Management Center and schedule that scan. We have another video that explains the ASGARD Management Center, so I will go over this quickly as this video is about the Analysis Cockpit. If you want to schedule a scan on all connected 3,500 assets, I just click Group Scan. I say what I want to do. In this case, I want to execute Spark. Name it accordingly. I don't want a client limit, so I say 0. And I want to execute no more than 10 scans per minute. I want that scan to be valid for just 1 day. And I want this scan to recur every week. This is basically the configuration of the group scan. Once we are sure that the configuration is set, we click on Create Group Scan. Now, once I click on that and say OK, you will see that my group scan can be found here, and as soon as I click on the play button, it will execute and repeat every week. In preparation for this webcast, I have performed this ahead of time. If we open this scan, it was executed a few days ago. We can see that this scan has been running for about 6 hours and has finished. Now, let's switch over to the analysis cockpit. We see the log files by clicking on baselining. These are the logs that are not part of an existing baseline. So we need to analyze these and possibly make new baselines. To begin, we want to find groups that match similar situations. We see that the analysis cockpit has made that easy for us to find these groups. We see the file 1d.asp in this particular location has been found more than 2,000 times. So we filter for it in order to dig a little deeper by simply clicking on it. As you can see, the filter has automatically been placed here. We can now dig deeper into these logs. We can scroll through it and see there is a reason 1, which is the most important reason because that is the reason this is a warning. We see this is a potential web shell. We are not entirely sure due to the score of 70. Which means it could be a problem, but we are not sure. In this case, it is probably the file name that is just a little bit suspicious, 1d.asp, so we raise a warning for this. Let's assume, for simplicity's sake, that this is just a legitimate anomaly that is quite common in your network. You have files in there that are named 1d.asp, and they are in this location. We want to make this as a baseline and filter it out because it is an anomaly. We do this using a very simple method. Just hit the Create Case button. Say use our search results for this case. We name it however we choose, for example, 1d.asp anomaly legitimate. This gives this case a certain meaning to us. And I'll just finish typing here. We say that this is an anomaly, and then we create the case. Now, all of our logs have disappeared from our log management. All logs with the 1d.asp have been moved to the case management section, which I will be showing you in a minute. But all other logs have also disappeared. That is because we still have this string in our filter. If we remove this filter, we see the remaining logs. Let's move on to case management section. We can find the 1d.asp case here. If we open it, we see all the logs that have been allocated to this case. Again, for simplicity's sake, let's assume we are now reviewing these logs, and we come to the conclusion that all this is still a legitimate anomaly. So, we close this case. Once a case is closed, all lines in there become part of the baseline. From now on, all lines that come in that is somehow similar to one of the logs within this case will automatically be grouped to this case and will not show up in the baselining section. The baselining section represents the work that you still have to do. The baselining section contains the logs that have not been analyzed yet. We could continue to go to the next one, or maybe focus on a separate host. But now is the time I would like to show you some of the magic we built in here. The Analysis Cockpit is a very nice and caring piece of software. We designed it to make the analyst's lives as easy as possible. What we've built in here is a function called AutoCases. The Analysis Cockpit automatically groups the logs that are somehow similar based on rules that we have given the Analysis Cockpit. If I hit AutoCases and I set the threshold of 100, the Analysis Cockpit will attempt to find groups of logs of at least 100 lines and will automatically create a case. Now this really makes life a lot easier. You don't have to dig through the logs to find similar lines. The Analysis Cockpit does this for you. After I hit the Submit button, you can see that the AutoCases agent is now working. You can see cases created, 7, 10, and so on. This will take a while, as we are working with approximately 1 million log lines. Let's use this time to take a look at how you can use this role model of the Analysis Cockpit in your Security Operations Center. We have already seen you can group logs into cases, that you can open cases, close cases, and there are even more status fields that you can use. The Analysis Cockpit comes with a simple two-level role model. There are first-level analysts, and they are intended to group events, open cases, and provide an initial assessment. The second-level analyst is responsible for reviewing initial assessments, providing final decisions, and then closing these cases. This is the easiest model for a Security Operations Center with just 2 levels. If you desire, you can give all rights to the first level so they can open, close cases, and do everything. If you have a very mature organization with maybe 6 or 7 groups of analysts that work all over the world, the role model is highly extendable and configurable. You can even configure it to use a 20-group level analyst model with, say, 50 different statuses for each case. We do not recommend doing this, but you could. This is an easy way to implement a workflow within your Security Operations Center regarding logs that came from Thor and Spark and are then sent to the Analysis Cockpit. So let's jump back to the Analysis Cockpit. Now we can see that we have more than 200 cases created. I will stop the recording to let this finish and be back in a moment. Welcome back to our webcast about the Analysis Cockpit. I paused the recording for about 7 or 8 minutes. Within these 7 to 8 minutes, the Analysis Cockpit has computed 223 cases. With these 223 cases, we have put roughly 1 million log lines in. This basically means we had 1 million log lines, but they represent only 223 different security incidents or anomalies. The Analysis Cockpit has now done the job for us, grouping these logs and putting them into cases. We see all cases have the type unknown, have the name auto-created, but we do have some information in here. We know how many hosts have been affected within this case. We know why the log lines have been grouped together. In this case, it's because the module file scan has found logs with the same file and path and the same SHA-1 hash. If we open this case, we see that all of the log lines are here. I can scroll down a little bit just to show you a little bit more. we can see that 2,540 log lines are within this case. And we could now review it, and we would then see there is a Yara rule that hit in reason 1. And we could now say, for simplicity's sake again, let's assume this is just an anomaly and we close the case. We could add a comment if we desire, but we will just close the case. Update it, and as soon as we close it, it will become part of the baseline. This means when a future scan comes in and contains this specific file and has the same SHA-1 hash, it will automatically be placed into this case, and it will not show up in the baseline section. This should be now empty. Why? Because all logs have been grouped together in cases and are now present in the case management section. This is a view we like to have because we have nothing to do, nothing to analyze. The baseline is now set, and we assume you have a scan next week. Some new files of indicators of compromise show up. You will have a relatively small number of events here. You will probably find it easy to group them together and get an overview and put them into cases again. We are coming to the end of our webcast. I hope you found it interesting, and it helps you to roll out and configure the Analysis Cockpit. Let's look back at the agenda for an overview. You have seen how the Analysis Cockpit works together with the ASGARD Management Center, that you could use the ASGARD Management Center to schedule frequent scans with Thor and Spark, collect the logs in the Analysis Cockpit, and you have seen that these logs show up in the baselining section of the Analysis Cockpit. You can create a baseline by creating cases within the Analysis Cockpit. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you found this helpful, and I wish you a good day, and hope to see you again in our next webcast. By the way, you can find all of our webcasts in the tutorials section of our website. You can also find them in the video description by clicking the link. Thank you, and goodbye.